We're talking today with Buck Buckingham of Grand Haven, Michigan, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Okay, start us off with some background on yourself, and to begin with, where and when were you born?
Detroit, Michigan, August 1st, 1929.
Okay. And did you grow up in Detroit or did you move around?
Mostly Detroit. I lived outside of Detroit in Lansing for a year, and the rest of the time was in Detroit, northwest Detroit.
Okay. And what was your family doing for a living when you were growing up?
Well, I had two younger brothers. My dad was he was a metallurgical engineer,
Okay.
and he sold die blocks for drop forgings.
All right.
And so that's why we moved from Detroit to Lansing and then back to Detroit. Same company, bigger job.
Okay. So did he have steady work during the 30s or was it on and off?
No, he didn't study work because he was a chemical engineer, and I guess they were in demand.
Okay.
But you could, it didn't dawn on me what the economy was, because everything was fine.
Yeah, sure. You know, and
But he worked all the time.
okay. All right. Now, you were still a kid when Pearl Harbor happened, but do you remember hearing about that?
Oh yes. Yeah, I spent the day glued to the big old Bosch and Long radio, which was a monster thing, and you sit right next to it to get it all, and that's what I recall it.
Okay. And did the war, I mean, did that change things in your community or at your school or anything?
No, just that things got tighter right away. Things were tight anyways because it was the Depression wasn't gone yet. And like I said, my dad was gone all the time, it seemed like.
Well, did you get involved in any kind of wartime activities? I mean, there were some communities had things like paper drives and metal drives
Well,
or
that
things.
right away.
Okay.
Right away, because I remember my brothers, I had two younger brothers, and we had one wagon that my dad had built, and we used to go out, imagine 2 or 3 times a week, maybe Thursday, a Friday, and a Saturday, and come back with a load of paper. Then we would get them in 25-pound packages so that they could be handled, and that was the paper drive. Then, but whenever the garage got filled up, why, we started over again. So all the time we did that.
All right. Now, when you filled up the garage, then did someone come and take it away, or what happened?
Kind of I assume a central pickup point. Big old truck would back up, and it was a 1-car garage, and the car sat outside. But we thought we were doing our part.
Sure. Now, did they ever have air raid drills or blackouts or anything like that?
The first blackout I can remember was we didn't have too many of them. A lot of them were, the first one was really confusing, because in the meantime we'd moved out to a nicer home on West Outer Drive in Detroit, and it was really strange to see all the lights. And Outer Drive is a nice, it used to be a great boulevard that went all the way around the city, out into Dearborn, and boy, it was dark. There was, you couldn't have a light. There was nothing. They had the wardens touring on foot, walking all over to see hey, what's that light in that garage going?
Mhm.
Or it's blackout. And we had, I'd say probably, I want to say one a month, but that would have been 12 for a whole year, and that'd be very much. At first, I imagine we had, I'm just guessing now, probably the first month and the second and third month, then I think we got it down to where we could survive on, because energy,
Mhm.
you tickle my memory.
Well, they may have figured out after a while the Germans probably weren't coming after all.
Well, they probably couldn't get through.
Yeah, a little far to get to
But,
Detroit.
Detroit would have been a prime target.
Yeah.
Because it's where all the automobile factories were and the heavy industry was.
Mhm. Sure.
So there was a lot of concentration there. So I didn't experience any time in the early war like rural.
Mhm.
Because later on, when I became 12 years old, I worked on a farm in Canada every summer for 3 summers. My brothers worked as I graduated.
Mhm.
They filled in there
So how did you wind up working on a farm in Canada?
because my dad had worked as in a farm in southern Michigan when he was growing up, and he thought everybody should do that. And then and I guess I wasn't in the Boy Scouts yet
Mm-hmm.
because I wasn't 12. So I was in the Cub Scouts. I guess I just wanted to do what I wanted to do.
All right. So now, when you were over in Canada, did you just live there for several months and work out there, or?
Usually from about the 4th of July, about a week before that,
Mm-hmm.
to a week before Labor Day.
Okay.
And I'd never been away from home before. So that was a big experience. But they needed people working on farms. And by that time I was a full-grown 12-year-old.
Okay. Now, was this something that your family just arranged privately, or was
Yeah.
there some? Okay, so that's
No,
not an
no,
organized system
no,
or anything
no,
like that.
no.
So did you stay with a farm family then in their home? Okay.
And I put in more than 40 hours a week.
All right. Okay. So now, did you finish high school?
Hmm.
Okay. When did you graduate from high school?
1947.
Okay. All right. And now at this point, did you have career plans, or did you want to go to school, or?
So I wanted to go to college,
Okay.
and ended up going to Hillsdale College for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Because as a kid, I got by. I didn't realize the importance of really recording the good parts.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to Redford High School for 4 years, graduated, and you already asked me
Yeah.
that. From that I went to Hillsdale, which was a 2-year school. I had to get my efforts in the right order,
Mm-hmm.
and transferred to Michigan State for my junior year. Ran out of money because in the meantime my dad died in an automobile accident. A guy ran a stop sign,
Oh.
and we ran out of money.
Okay.
So
Did you find a job then, or?
yeah, I was working I worked for Ford Motor Company in the press steel building as a I had to supply the steel. I didn't have to buy it. No,
Yeah.
I was only a 20-year-old kid. But, I had to make sure the drop forge guys had enough stock.
Mm-hmm.
They'd hammer it out. So I was a supply.
Right.
And we worked there, I think, 2 summers. They needed people in the summertime.
Mm-hmm.
And where else could a guy make, I think I made $1.03 an hour.
Not so bad in
Good deal.
1949. Yeah.
The starting wage then was somewhere around 90 cents in the Ford Motor Company.
Right.
So I was way ahead of the game.
Okay. Now, were you doing that when the Korean War started?
No, Korean War was started in June
50.
of '50. I was in college. I was working wherever I could make some money
Mm-hmm.
because I wasn't a veteran yet,
Right.
and therefore I was trying to supply some money for tuition.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in college, after I went to Michigan State, see, I spent 1 year and ran out of money,
Mm-hmm.
and then I tried to find a job. This would have been in '51 now,
Okay.
and they didn't want somebody just for 5 or 6 weeks. They wanted somebody permanently, so. I wish I had a chance to write this down before. I wouldn't be so confused. But
Now, did you have now with the war going on, there was a draft going on at that time. Now, were you thinking about enlisting in the military?
I wanted to enlisted in the Air Force,
Mm-hmm.
and because I wanted to fly, and I'd gone to a couple of summer camps. But then it came a point where I had to find a full-time job or wherever they put me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did part-time jobs, mowed lawns, stuff like that. My grades weren't very good. I had time to grow up yet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that was available. Then I tried to enlist in the Air Force to take because I wanted to fly,
Right.
and that was not successful because their program was cut off. This was towards the end of the war,
Mm-hmm.
and so they didn't have this program anymore. So.
So there was kind of
But
a cadet program or something?
It was going to be a enlistment program,
Right.
but that was discontinued.
Okay.
Then I had to register for the draft,
Mm-hmm.
Which I did, and I went in on December 4th, 1951,
All right.
something like that.
All right. And then which branch of the service did you go in?
Well, in the draft, you went where they told you.
Right.
And when they told a group of us, all right, you guys step over here and line up. Well, raise your hand. And I was in the Marine Corps.
Mm-hmm.
And it was I think had just started drafting in the Marine Corps.
Mhm.
And so I was in the first honor platoon of nothing but draftees, and this designation as an honor platoon didn't come out until we'd been in boot camp for 5 or 6 weeks. And from then on, the pressure was on us. We recognized the fact that every one of us, I think there were 65 guys in, we started with about, I want to say, between 70 and 75. And they physically went out or mentally couldn't handle it or weren't qualified for some reason or other. So now, I forgot your question.
Well, we were basically, we're getting you into the Marine Corps. So you get your draft notice, and then you wind up being put into the Marine Corps. Now, when you first got that draft notice, where did you report to first? Did you go to Detroit or Fort Custer or?
Detroit.
Okay. And is that?
Had to be there in the wee hours of the morning. My next younger brother dropped me off. And I called my mom about 10:30, 11 in the morning. Mom, I'm in the Marine Corps. Where are you going? I'll let you know.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I was going to South Carolina.
Right. So Parris Island.
Parris Island. And she says, "Where's that?" Well, look at a map.
Mm-hmm. Now, how did they get you down there?
Train.
Okay.
And a couple of drill instructors. One was a sergeant, just got back from Korea, and the other one was a staff sergeant, one up above, and he'd been in the islands in World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And everything you read about drill instructors was true. And I read a Life magazine article in September, and it was a pictorial presentation. And it was, I always wanted to get a copy of it, I never could. But of this guy's boot camp.
Mm-hmm.
I said, oh my God. But so I knew from that what to expect. Because I had enough friends that were in the Army, and theirs wasn't that big.
Right. Okay. Now, while you were in transit, while you were on the train, were these sergeants fairly well behaved, or were they already shouting at you?
No, they were pretty gentle.
Okay.
There were, instead of get your butt over here, it was get over here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was enough of us in that first group that knew what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
And just do as you're told.
Right.
And do it to the best of your ability.
Now, were you older than most of the other guys?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I was 22.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That'd be all right.
Okay.
And but 22 was pretty old.
All right. Now, what happens once you arrive at Parris Island? When you first pull up there, what do they do?
Would you line up over here?
Okay.
All right. And I was in the front rank, and just because I was, my last name began with a B,
Mm-hmm.
and also I was tall. Not like some of the other guys, but we had some shorties that they didn't meet the height, and they were gone.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I shrunk an inch or something. I used to be 6'2", and I went down to 6'1".
All right. But when you got there, I mean, when they were telling you to go line up, were they shouting at you, or was it still just regular?
No shouting.
Okay.
They were good drill instructors. They knew how to get the most. And later on, there was a lot of voice raising, swearing. No. In other words, different than get your butt over here. A little bit louder, because when they spoke, you better do it. Otherwise, you were in trouble. And there was no way to get things done. And so I have no trouble with it. And we lost some guys that couldn't stand it. I remember one guy, we were in these pyramid tents. We would hold either 4 or 5, maybe squeeze 6 guys in there. But I think we had 5. And there's a pot-bellied stove in the middle. And it was click on, it was fueled by kerosene. Because it was the first week in December in South Carolina, and it is not balmy down there at that time. So it was cold. And the demeanor of the drill instructors was just fine until we got to where we were going, to where the tents were.
Okay.
And I decided I'm going to do as I'm told and do my best. That was the way to do it.
Now, were there some guys who tried to push back, or?
Yeah, or so what? Oh yeah, well, they weren't there because that's the first step of not being able to be counted on in the Marine Corps. So I was glad I went in Marines.
All right. Now, what kind of training do you get at Parris Island? What are they making you do?
Discipline, follow orders, follow orders and excel at those, because those drill instructors, that's their report card. If they produce a bunch of bums that can't understand or don't have anything, no drive to get it done, couldn't hit a target with a broom, they don't want those. I wouldn't want to go into combat with one of those people. So.
All right. Now, when people did mess up, what kind of punishment did they get, or how did that work?
Depending on how they messed up.
Okay.
If it was just your other left foot stupid or something like that, they would work with that person, but they'd also work harder and get that person who was causing the problem squared away quick. Because again, if you had the head on your right or left, landing on a beach or whatever, you better be able to count on him, because he's counting on you.
Okay.
So,
And then, did you do a lot of physical training?
well, it was calisthenics right after when they told you to get out of your sack. I think it was 5:30 in the morning or 5 or whatever it was. It was when I was sleeping. But just following orders and understanding what you were in now.
Okay.
These guys were professionals. They had to be.
Right. Now, as far as you knew, you were the first training platoon that was all draftees,
As far as I know.
at least for the Korean War era at Parris Island. Yeah.
We wouldn't have we were not the first training platoon.
Right.
But we were the first 100%
Right.
at the end of the at the graduation period, honor platoon.
And that meant you had the best record of the other platoons?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Or I don't know about the other platoons, but we had reached this level.
Mm-hmm.
And a bunch of draftees that, weren't worth a damn before.
Right.
No, they were pretty important.
Okay. So at that point now, how long did the boot camp last?
I think it was 12 weeks then, but I'm not sure. It's been moved up and down over the
Yeah,
years.
yes, it has. But that's probably about right for that period. Okay. And after you complete boot camp, now what do you do?
Okay, so we were given a 10-day leave, and so I took the leave, of course, because I couldn't wait to get home.
Mm-hmm.
And I came back and I went to Camp Lejeune area, and one small area was Camp Geiger, and there was other amphibious places. This was in South Carolina.
Is it South Carolina or North Carolina now?
Well, I was
Because Lejeune is North Carolina.
in North Carolina. Okay, Parris Island was the south,
Right.
and
Okay, so you're at Camp Geiger.
I was at a engineering headquarters and service company, which was personnel.
Mm-hmm.
I could type.
Right.
I had 3 years of college.
Mm-hmm.
I was later tried to, then encouraged by some of the officers in the upper echelon NCOs to apply for OCS,
Mm-hmm.
which would have been, I didn't want to, as I said, I was in there for 2 years.
Right.
Korean War was starting to bend down,
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't see being gone for, I was already older than most of them.
Right.
So I figured I'd be an old man by the time I got out of there.
All right. Now, let's see. This is the 8th Engineer Battalion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that you're with at that point. All right. So now, what was the battalion doing there? What kinds of stuff did the
Well, we had
companies do?
the companies were A company, B company, and then there was a bridge, floating bridge company.
Mm-hmm.
And that was in this battalion. And so one of them was a service company, the other was administration,
Mm-hmm.
and the other was in the boondocks, building bridges, and they were slocking through there. So I handled mainly record books.
Mm-hmm.
We called them service record books, and you would enter it from a daily. I was a typist,
Mm-hmm.
so I was in a group of guys, and then we had one sergeant that was in charge of us, and then there was 2 tech sergeants and a master sergeant. So, big company has to move all equipment.
Mm-hmm.
In an engineer outfit, you got to order the stuff. Well, I was taking care of personnel,
Okay.
and that's pretty much what I was trained.
All right. So basically, do you have what amounts to an office job?
Yeah, but I still went to the field,
Okay.
and I never was in combat.
Right.
I think most of us wanted to go, but really, I was just as happy I didn't
Mm-hmm.
when I got out. The Marines is a good place to be, because at least they trained you for something.
Sure. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about what life is like for you while you were there in that job. What was your daily routine like?
Well, we lived in Quonset huts, which were colder in the dickens in the wintertime and sweltering in the summertime, because there was no insulation, it's just the metal
Mm-hmm.
in the old Quonsets. And Camp Geiger was in a small camp next to the big camp.
Right.
And let's see,
All right. So you live in Quonset huts, and then when does your day start?
your day started, I think, reveille or?
Yeah. Well, when do you get up?
Usually it was around a little after 6,
Okay.
and you had to go to get some chow. You could straggle if you wanted to, but you got it within a certain, in other words, one going to this building and one going to that building, they form up kind of loosely, and then when everybody was there, when the time came, why there was a corporal or a sergeant that marched through.
Okay, so you're still moving around as organized groups,
Yeah.
even if you're just heading to chow or something else like that. Okay. And then when do you start work?
By 8 o'clock.
Okay. All right. And then did they give you an 8-hour day or a 10-hour day or a 4-hour day?
Only 4-hour days were, I can't remember one.
Okay.
Most of them were, well, even on Sunday, you'd have to be there till 1 or 2 o'clock, something like that. But there was very few guys, maybe one NCO and 2 privates or PFCs, which I was one.
Right.
And
But there's still people coming and going on and off the base even on a Sunday, and somebody has to keep track of that.
yeah, and being in personnel, you always had somebody reporting in. You didn't have to report till whatever time was on his orders, but they were either 12 o'clock or by 6 o'clock in the evening, and that varied, so you had to have someone there.
All right. Now, you're in the Marine Corps in a period where the military is starting to desegregate. Did you have any black Marines on the base, or was everybody
Yeah.
white?
Yeah, in fact, the one NCO was a staff sergeant. He was black.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of his name. A French name, Chapeau,
Okay.
something like that. And he was a good guy. He spoke English.
Yes.
There was no difficulty understanding what he meant. You followed his orders. You know, if you do what you're told, there's no problem. But if you think you're better, forget it.
Okay. Now, would you get to go off base much at all? Or did you just stay in the camp the whole time?
Well, I had a car, and I had driven all the way down from Detroit
Okay.
to Camp Geiger, Camp Lejeune. So I was popular. But I didn't loan it, not even to the good friends that I developed, because I learned a long time ago.
Okay. But you would sometimes, you would go off the base and travel
Yeah.
around a little bit.
Yeah, used to go over the Atlantic Ocean and swim. Liberty Town was Jacksonville, then there was a bigger town. But that was into South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a PFC didn't have much money.
Right.
And I can't remember what the gas prices were, even on the base. But when I had to fill that 1950 Ford with gasoline, that, I know what.
That would be kind of limiting. All right. Now, you were in the segregated South. I mean, did you really notice that at all? You'd come from Detroit, and you would have seen all sorts of people up there.
Yeah, a little bit. More black people, Negroes were around, and but some of them had super jobs. Some of them were great Marines, and there was no conflict that I can ever recall until later on in my short career in the Marine Corps.
So, what developed then later
Well,
on?
at that time I was in headquarters of the Marine Corps, went in as a corporal, and things were freer because I was living in just outside of D.C. In fact, I was living in Virginia.
So, did you move up to Quantico then? Is that where
No, I never did go to Quantico.
Okay.
I went to headquarters of the Marine Corps was by the Navy Annex,
Okay.
and
Is that like Alexandria, Virginia, or somewhere around there?
Arlington.
Arlington. Okay.
In fact, the barracks I was in jutted out into Arlington Cemetery.
Okay.
So every once in a while you'd be awakened by a military funeral barrage of artillery or rifle fire.
Okay. So, how long did you stay at Camp Geiger, do you think?
I was there till I reported into Arlington headquarters of Marine Corps in November. I was there about a year.
Okay. Yeah. So November '52 looks like when you go up there. All right. At least that's so. Or that's when you go to Washington. So
Yeah.
your last year. So you have about 8-9 months or whatever at Camp Geiger, and then switch.
Yeah.
How did you wind up making that switch? Did the Marines just tell you one day you're going somewhere else, or did you apply for a program, or?
Well, they were looking for particular people,
Okay.
and I fit whatever they wanted because I had 3 years of college, and I was big enough to defend myself and let them know what I thought. I had performed okay. I didn't apply for it. They said, the officers came to me and said, "What do you think?
Okay.
Go?" And I said, "I don't know, let me think about it." He said, "Well, I'll give you about 20 minutes. And I decided, okay. So I was given, I didn't take a leave because I'd used pretty much my first year's a lot of time up.
Okay.
And so I just drove up there.
All right. Now, how was the job in Washington different, or at the headquarters? How was that different from Camp Geiger?
Well, you had to go from wearing dungarees to wearing at least marine green or khakis in the summer. I only wore dress blues, which I had to borrow when I drove the Michigan Jeep for Eisenhower's first inaugural parade.
Okay.
So I guess the Republican Party had said that we'll supply white Willie's Overland Jeeps provided Marines in dress blues
Mm-hmm.
with dry. And how I got in that, I don't know. I know I didn't raise my hand, but they came pretty much from posts around the DC area.
Right. Okay, so how did they manage, and what do you remember about the inaugural and how all that stuff worked? What did you do that day, or what did you see?
Well, I remember it was colder than a billy goat, and we were up at 4:30 or something like that. I remember breakfast at 5. And then we had to be ready to go into DC from Arlington.
Mm-hmm.
And that was about 6:30 or 7. So it was a slow day because the parade didn't start till middle of the afternoon. And so here we are standing around in dress blues and making sure that nobody comes and messes up our white Jeep.
Mm-hmm.
And we were dragging a Michigan float. Each one of these Jeeps had a float.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was pretty much protecting inventory. But we had coffee. They had coffee rounds. They'd come around, feed you coffee. And then you had to find a head somewhere.
Yeah.
Because this was just out in the street, you know.
Right.
There weren't any trees.
Something that the planners hadn't thought about that.
But it was interesting because we had meals brought out to us. Then when we finally got in the parade, why everything was well organized. I was driving the Jeep, and I had a tech sergeant as my leader. He was sitting next to me, and it's the first one he'd been in. But he had ribbons from here all the way up to here. He'd been all over during World War II.
Right.
I hadn't been anywhere.
Yeah.
I felt like a chicken running across.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really interesting. It really was interesting. And it was a long day. And my wife, to be, I had met her on New Year's Eve. She was in the Air Force.
Mm-hmm.
That's her picture.
Okay.
There. And so she made sure that I got some rest. And we already married it. And slept in the back seat of my car to get some shut-eye, because I'd been up forever, it seemed like. Got back to the base about midnight that night. That was a long day, but I'll never forget it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, how did you meet your wife? You said you had on New Year's. Did you just go to a party there, or?
Well, around the DC area, there's a lot of military bases, and she was in communications, worked out of the Pentagon, and she'd been in about 3 or 4 months less than I had been in, and it was a bar, New Year's Eve, of 1951.
Or two, probably.
2.
52.
Yeah.
2. So I was glad to hit the sack that night. I was pretty tired.
Okay. And then when you think, again, so what was your actual job then when you were at the Marine headquarters now? Was it still just personnel or was it more complicated?
Personnel, pretty much. Dealing with some people that had problems, you know, combat related stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And following through, and eventually I was in charge. I was a corporal then.
Mm-hmm.
Not too long after that, I got a sergeant's stripe. So, and I had only been in a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And I had offers, but I wanted to get back to civilian life.
Mm-hmm. All right. And then what kinds of, who were you dealing with or working with? Did you have, was it mostly just non-coms, or did you have a lot more officers hanging around, or?
We had officers hanging around because each one of them were really in charge of a company.
Mm-hmm.
And the enlisted NCOs, they probably knew more than a whole bunch of officers put together, because those guys were, the officers were college graduates recent, where these other guys were six-stripe master sergeants, and they didn't have the next rank, which would be created after I got out. But that was good, and they're a good bunch. And there was a bad egg every once in a while, but you either skirted away from them, did what they wanted.
Mm-hmm. So
Because the stripes mean an awful lot.
So that boot camp training, just do what they tell you to do, that still applies here.
Oh yeah, it's got to be. No question.
All right. Now, if you think to the time that you spent there working in Washington, are there particular things that happened that stand out in your memory, or particular impressions of that job that stand out for you?
Well, probably of some of the guys' record books that I had to review and make sure everything was there.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to read every page, and there were citations in there. I said, "Oh my God!"
Mm-hmm.
And one guy was awarded, that I saw his record book, Navy Cross twice.
Mm-hmm.
And so the job meant a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Now, were you involved in processing recommendations for awards, or were you just
No,
was working through?
no, I had what they earned,
Right.
and just making sure that they were paid right.
Mm-hmm.
They kept track of their leave time.
Mm-hmm.
It was a personnel job,
Right. Right.
which helped me later on.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a couple chances to make bucks on the outside. If I do this, I'd say no.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's always looking for a deal.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what they have on their arm or collar or what.
All right. Well, what did they think you could do for them? Just make something go away from their record, or?
No, I recall vaguely, because I don't want to remember things like that. Where they changes leave time from time remaining to a more.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know anything like that went on until I started checking with my other cohorts
Mm-hmm.
who were in the personnel. And oh yeah, told them no. So it got around that nobody ever asked me again.
Mm-hmm.
So we must have got that taken care of.
All right. Okay. Anything else that you want to put on the record here about this service time?
Met my wife.
Yeah, you did tell me that. Okay. Now, did you get married after you got out of the service? Or?
No, she was in the Air Force, and we had not a military record, or wedding, because at that time I didn't own a pair of dress blues.
Right.
And that was around $150. You'd wear them once. That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
And so, just do what you're told, and if you're brought up by your parents right, you got no problem.
Okay. Now, but you got married while you were still in the service. Okay. And then, now, were there any rules about, particularly for the women? I mean, did your wife have to leave the service when she got married, or she was able to stay
No,
on?
at one time, I guess, way back when, no, she could have, she loved it, her job, because she retired because she was pregnant, and she and I made about the same amount of money, you know, big deal. I forgot who it was. I'd be ashamed to tell you.
Did you live off base then at that point?
Yeah, we lived in an apartment in Arlington, and it was $90 a month, and we had to scratch to get that in.
Yep.
And we had commuter rations. We used to call them comrades, and we were paid to eat off the base, and I can't remember whether I had to pay for my lunch. I know I paid for it, but whether I gave them cash or whether I wrote a check. But I know it was done properly because someone's in charge of that. So, and same with her, she was working in the Pentagon.
All right. And now you basically finish up 2 years after you started. So early December of '53, your enlistment is up. What do you do then after you get out?
I'd already applied to return to Michigan State.
Okay.
And we lived in let's see.
You lived in
Very
Williamston
housing.
for a semester. You lived in
Yeah.
Williamston and then you moved
Yeah,
on campus for
Yeah,
your
I got,
housing.
you had to, get on a list.
Okay, so they had some married student housing, but not enough for you to get into right away.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then, and what did you take your degree in?
Business administration.
Okay. And then what did you do after you got out?
Well, I sold insurance for a year. Didn't like that. Went to work for Sears, Roebuck and Company. Got in their training program because I had a college degree and I was a veteran.
Right.
And 32 years later, I retired.
All right. Okay. Now you said a little bit about this already, but overall, how do you think your time in the service affected you, or what did you take out of it?
I think everybody should be in the service. Not for 4 years or 6 years or whatever they want, but I think everybody has to be familiar with working with other people and depending. And I'd already passed that before I ever went into service because I was the oldest. Things were tough. My dad was killed. So I had a couple different avenues to take, so I think it all paid out.
All right.
So I'm not disappointed with my
Okay.
life. I got a great daughter, I got 2 sons. One's already retired, so.
Yeah. Yeah, so you weren't such an old man then after all, at least
No.
not when you were in the Corps. All right. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to share the story today.
How can you remember all that? You can't. You got a machine there.
That's
Recorded
right.
everything.